Senator Mark Warner is introducing legislation to hold data centers accountable for rising utility costs.
It's time for action to lower your costs.
Tell your member of Congress, support Mark Warner's plan to lower power bills.
We promise a tenfold refund if it doesn't work. Traditional dentures can cause jawbone loss and alter your facial contours over time, but these dentures completely avoid these problems.
Once somebody has decided, for whatever reason, we need to go attack this country, then we start manufacturing information to justify it. And you see what you want to see, right? You see what you expect to see. Now, most of our military is analysts, are trained to analyze and analyze well. But if you have a political agenda, it's that whole confirmation bias thing, right? You want information that confirms what you already think. So yeah, I'm going to see an air conditioner as an air purifier. Prove me wrong, right? Especially once I bomb it, it doesn't exist anymore. Prove me wrong. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think there's a lot of that.
And then there's the whole KBR thing with Cheney. Point being, and I know we're moving to Lebanon, we went to war for weapons of mass destruction that were never there. These last wars lasted, 21, 22 years long? I have a 4-year-old. I don't want my 4-year-old going and looking for weapons of mass destruction that don't fucking exist.
Yeah.
And potentially getting killed over it.
No worry
watching how
about that
fucked up he gets.
Yeah, right?
From being in combat.
Yeah.
Because we all see that, especially if you watch this show. You see how, you see the cost that it takes on people.
And it is a huge cost. And it's not just the, it's not just the people that lost a leg, lost an arm, died. And that is absolutely tragic.
All right, bird lover, Cindy, Wig, bird lover, Amanda, Roaster. Hello. Thank you for being here. This is not a true crime podcast out of Prince William County. Please watch the podcast we did 2 days ago. Hit the like button, share the podcast, leave me questions. We're following the case of Mustafa Al-Jazari. This is a case that's been ongoing for 4 years. And the county just refused to get this guy to trial. The question is, the county says that he's guilty, but they won't give him his day in court. And the question is why? So I got my hand on the sealed file. the body cams to document. And we're putting it on YouTube, and we're asking the question, why is this county so terrified to take this guy to trial? Well, the reason they're not taking him to trial is because they falsified the case. Now, before I got my hand on the sealed file, this case was all over NBC4. After we get the file, after we leak this file, the county is actively attempting to bury the case. It's no longer on NBC4. They don't want to talk about it, and they're refusing to take him to trial. So, watch the podcast we did 2 days ago. Leave me questions, and throughout the day, we're out and about door dashing, so we're trying to make some money. In between the deliveries, I'm editing the podcast, so I'm gonna be releasing short videos. Make sure you watch the short videos, share out the videos, share them on your Facebook. That's how we're gonna get the word out on this case. And make sure you leave me questions. Thank you for being here. We've got 11 minutes to go for drop off. So in the meantime, we're listening to Sean Ryan. This is a podcast that he did 4 months ago with Michael Lester. This guy is very interesting. He wrote a book, Are We the Bad Guy? This is on my to read list. I'm looking forward to getting this book, reading this book. You'll learn a lot listening to what this guy is talking about. All right, thank you for being here.
The mental cost and the toll just on your body from being in some of the attack this country. Then we start.
I worked in law enforcement just short of 20 years. American Military University popped up at the right time. I wanted to differentiate myself a little bit, and I wanted to have something that I was passionate about and that I was going to be able to apply to what I was doing. Even now that I'm out of law enforcement, I do get to use my degree every day. Walking into this gym, this gives me an opportunity to sit down face to face with people and help them achieve their goals. I'm Bobby Allman, and I'm made for what's next.
Have you heard about pop-on siding? We need 50 homeowners in your area to trial this radically simple new siding service.
Then we start manufacturing information to justify it. And you see what
the building. Well, what Pete and his team came up with, a zoomed in scaled map of a facility that was in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
And so they did what they put their heads together, and what the U.S. said, what Colin Powell was saying, was that there was some type of a air purification system on the roof. There was some kind of a truck that had a missile on it on the side of it, and there was a sentry outside of the building. Well, what Pete and his team came up with, they said, actually, that air purification system is an air conditioning unit on the roof. That truck that you think is a missile is a water truck that is refueling the fucking water system. And if you zoom in on that sentry, that's just a guy taking a piss on the side of the building. They got this information back. They totally discarded it and presented the previous.
Yeah. I think this happens more often than we think. I mean, once somebody has decided, for whatever reason, we need to go attack this country, then we start manufacturing information to justify it. And you see what you want to see, right? You see what you expect to see. Now, most of our military analysts are trained to analyze and analyze well. But if you're if you have a political agenda, it's that whole confirmation bias thing, right? You want information that confirms what you already think. So yeah, I'm going to see an air conditioner as an air purifier. Prove me wrong, right? Especially once I bomb it, it doesn't exist anymore. Prove me wrong. So yeah, I think there's a lot of that.
And then there's the whole KBR thing with Cheney. Point being, and I know we're moving to Lebanon, we went to war for weapons of mass destruction that were never there. These last wars lasted, 21, 22 years long? I have a 4-year-old. I don't want my 4-year-old going and looking for weapons of mass destruction that don't fucking exist.
Yeah.
And potentially getting killed over it.
No
and
worry
watching
about
how
that
fucked up he gets.
Yeah, right?
From being in combat.
Yeah.
Because we all see that, especially if you watch this show, you see how, you see the cost that it takes on people.
And it is a huge cost. And it's not just the, it's not just the people that lost a leg, lost an arm, died. And that is absolutely tragic. The mental cost and the toll just on your body from being in some of these wars is more than most people recognize. You know, I mean, a lot of our veterans, I mean, you come back from some of this stuff and you can only be part of this and see it for so long until it affects you. You know, and you don't just walk out of warfare and walk back into society and say, okay, yeah, yesterday I'm sleeping with my weapon in my hand with one eye open because anybody can attack me at any moment, and now you want me to go to a hotel room and go to a conference tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. The cost that we pay for this is much higher than the money, and much higher than just what's visible, I think.
Let's move on to Lebanon.
Lebanon or Libya or
Libya, wherever we were going.
I was just making the rounds. If we just make the rounds of who's around, and Lebanon is one. Make the rounds of who's around Israel. We systematically help them get rid of any military force. The one that's been left, the one that's the strongest, and I mean, think about it. The strongest one is always the one that's last, right? Mm-hmm. And that's Iran. And we need to, is Iran a threat for the U.S.? Has Iran attacked the U.S.? Now, some people can say, well,
yes. I will say yes, because when I was over in Iraq, they are the ones that introduced the EFP. The EFP, it's a IED, a roadside bomb. Killed a lot of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
They're constantly, you know, they had a lot of influence over IED manufacturing facilities, and this is the argument to everybody, between me and the people that I talk about this stuff with, and you know, it's like, well, they've killed a lot of Americans, and I'm like, yeah, you're right, they have killed a lot of fucking Americans, and you know what would have been great is if we would have retaliated immediately for killing our friends, but this isn't what this is about. This isn't retaliation for what they did, you know, a number of years ago in the Iraq War and probably in the Afghan War as well. This is about what Israel wants.
Mm-hmm.
This is about nuclear weapons that probably don't even fucking exist.
Well, let's talk about that. What was the first thing we were told on why we were going into Iran?
Nuclear weapons.
Nuclear weapons. Great.
This is horrible. Missing teeth causes a range of different problems in a person's life, and Nuvi's new 24Z technology delivers a beautiful smile that is both strong and permanent.
Trump's own Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, testified in front of Congress there is no evidence that Iran is building any sort of nuclear weapon. Our own intelligence says that. The director of the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Association? No. forgot what the last day is, came out and said there is absolutely no evidence that Iran possesses or is in the process of possessing a nuclear weapon. Don't forget that Obama in 1915 signed the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which we call the Iran nuclear deal. That required that in order for us not to put sanctions on Iran, that they would agree that they would not refine any sort of plutonium into weapons grade, and they would not seek a nuclear bomb, right? And they would allow international inspectors to come in and inspect anywhere in Iran to make sure that this was true. That was signed in 2015. In 2018, Trump said, I want to put sanctions on Iran. Well, you can't because we have an agreement that says we can't. Well, then I'm going to pull us out of the agreement. So in 2018, Trump pulled us out of the agreement that allowed us to send inspectors in. And now we're saying, well, they're building nuclear weapons. They have to agree to inspections. We had an agreement for inspections.
Did they allow our inspectors to get in?
They did.
They honored the agreement.
They allowed the International Atomic Energy Agency, that's what it is, to send inspectors in and look. We already had that. We took it away, and then we say, we think they're building nuclear weapons. But our own intelligence service says they're not. Yeah, well, we think they are, so we're going to go in.
So was that done on purpose to manufacture a narrative?
It would appear that way. I couldn't say if it was or not. I don't have insight to that, but it certainly gives the impression of that.
Sheesh.
And again, all of this, look up Tulsi Gabbard, look what she testified in Congress, look up the IAEA and see what the commissioner said. All of this is public record.
I remember this is right before we bombed them in June, correct? When Tulsi said this.
Tulsi said that, yeah, right beforehand. Yeah, this is not, 20 years ago or 10 years ago. This is recently when we were looking. This is like,
it was right before
I think this was actually in March.
But not one of our 18 intelligence agencies reported that. Only Mossad.
Yeah. So you got to look at that and say, so let's just, a normal intelligent person would look and say, if we weren't there because they had nuclear weapons, which it appears they didn't, then why are we there? Now, oil? You could argue it, but how much oil do we get from Iran? Almost none. That is not an American issue. Oil for us isn't an issue. So what are the four things that the U.S. said that we need to do? Why are we there? What are our goals? And I'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about the 1913, 1939 parallels. What are our goals? Our goals are to completely destroy their missile program. Okay. Laudable goal. Do those missiles, do they threaten the U.S.? No, they have no missiles. They have no intercontinental ballistic missiles. Who do they threaten? They threaten Israel. We want to, quote, annihilate their entire Navy. Do they have a blue water Navy that could come over to the United States and attack us? No. Who can they attack? Israel. And they can use that to stop the flow of oil through the Straits of Hormuz, right? We want to sever their proxy threads, right? Because they support other groups through proxy, right? And again, we can talk about that people don't understand that most of those proxy groups are there because of Israel as well. And we'll talk about that. Because you can't just take these independently and say, well, look what they're doing. Okay, great. Why are they doing that? How did they get formed? What is their goal, right? And you've got to understand all of that before you understand the reaction to it. And then the final one is, ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Okay. Interesting goals. The first three are actually measurable. Can we measure whether or not we destroy their missiles, annihilate their navy, and cut off their proxy threads? We can measure those. And this is one of the reasons why I go back to the 1913 thing. All of this will tie together. In 1913, they had no definable goals. We don't have a definable goal. Those three are not bad. We can put a check in the block and say, yes, we've accomplished that. We can go home now. Ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. When is that done? That's never done. We just signed up for a forever war here. If that's one of our goals, that means we will be there forever. We will never leave, because the second we do, they could form a bomb. So if that's one of our goals, we have just announced that we will never leave the area. I don't think the American public wants to sign up for a forever war in Iran.
I don't know anybody that does, other than Lindsey Graham and his cronies up there in the Trump administration.
The most recent Reuters poll, or Gallup poll, sorry, says 56% of Americans absolutely do not want us at war. So, yeah, I don't think this is what people signed up for.
If you, or someone you know, have a teenager who is on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or Snapchat, this is the money glitch that could get families potentially compensated right now. These apps were allegedly built to keep teenagers hooked, not by accident, on purpose. And while your child was scrolling for hours, getting more anxious, more depressed, more lost, these companies had proof it was happening. They saw it, they hid it, and they did nothing. This isn't just talk. Over 2,000 families have already filed lawsuits. CBS News reported that Meta's CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, was called to testify in court over the damage Instagram caused to children. This is real, and it is happening right now. Here is what most parents don't know. If your child dealt with depression, anxiety, eating problems, self-harm, or thoughts of suicide while using these apps, your family may qualify to seek potential compensation. In January 2026, Snapchat and TikTok settled a major addiction lawsuit before a jury could even hear the case. They saw the evidence and chose to pay. Facebook already paid $85 million for mental health harm. One family got $9.1 million after losing a child to social media. File now, money that could help with therapy costs, secure their college fund, or give your family a fresh start. But only if you act before the final lawsuit is filed. After that date, the door is closed forever. You are out. No exceptions. 85% of families who qualify will never file because they think their child's story isn't bad enough. Don't make that mistake. It's free and it takes 30 seconds. A few simple questions. That's it. Your information stays 100% private. You are not signing anything by checking. You are just finding out if you qualify. But you have to do it before the deadline hits. Don't let these companies get away with what they did to our teenagers. Click now to check if you qualify. This page comes down once the lawsuit moves forward.
You can beat cancer and still lose everything. Or you can have a little known policy that puts up to $400,000 in your pocket if you're ever diagnosed with cancer, heart attack, or stroke. Look, I had no idea this even existed until my neighbor told me about it last month. She was diagnosed with breast cancer earlier this year, and instead of worrying about medical bills and lost income, she got a check for $250,000 while she was still alive and fighting. Tax-free cash, no restrictions. Money she could control. She used some for treatment, paid off her mortgage, and even took a healing trip to Europe with her family. Here's what blew my mind. You don't have to die for this to pay out. Most people think you need to pass away for any kind of payout, but that's not how this secret health guardian works. The moment you get seriously diagnosed with cancer, heart attack, stroke, or other major conditions, you can access the cash immediately while you're still here to use it, while you're still fighting, while you can actually benefit from the money. And here's the crazy part. Most people already qualify for this and don't even know it. My neighbor found out she was eligible in less than 2 minutes. She already had something in place that she thought was just regular coverage, but it turned.
Let's talk about the economic impact of the world right now. What this has caused and what it will potentially cause.
Yeah.
Oil's what, over $100 a barrel now?
Yeah.
Europe's pissed.
Yeah.
China's pissed.
All right. Okay. We can talk about that people don't understand that most of those proxy groups are there because of Israel as well. With those missiles, which it appears they didn't, then why are we there? Now, oil, you could argue it, but how much oil do we get from Iran? Almost none. That is not an American issue. Oil for us isn't an issue. So what are the 4 things that the U.S. said that we need to do? Why are we there? What are our goals? And I'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about the 1913, 1939 parallels. What are our goals? Our goals are to completely destroy their missile program. Okay. Laudable goal. Do those missiles, do they threaten the U.S.? No, they have no missiles. They have no intercontinental ballistic missiles. Who do they threaten? They threaten Israel. We want to, quote, annihilate their entire Navy. Do they have a blue water Navy that could come over to the United States and attack us? No. Who can they attack? Israel. And they can use that to stop the flow of oil through the Straits of Hormuz, right? We want to sever their proxy threads, right? Because they support other groups through proxy, right? And again, we can talk about that people don't understand that most of those proxy groups are there because of Israel as well. And we'll talk about that. Because you can't just take these independently and say, well, look what they're doing. Okay, great. Why are they doing that? How did they get formed? What is their goal, right? And you've got to understand all of that before you understand the reaction to it. And then the final one is, ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Okay. Interesting goals. The first 3 are actually measurable. Can we measure whether or not we destroy their missiles, annihilate their Navy, and cut off their proxy threads? We can measure those. And this is one of the reasons why I go back to the 1913 thing. All of this will tie together. In 1913, they had no definable goals. We don't have a definable goal. Those 3 are not bad. We can put a check and block and say, yes, we've accomplished that. Ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. When is that done? That's never done. We signed up for a forever war here. If that's one of our goals, that means we will be there forever. We will never leave, because the second we do, they could form a bomb. So if that's one of our goals, we have just announced that we will never leave the area. I don't think the American public wants to sign up for a forever war in Iran.
I don't know anybody that does, other than Lindsey Graham and his cronies up there in the Trump administration.
The most recent Reuters poll, or Gallup poll, sorry, says 56% of Americans absolutely do not want us at war. So, yeah, I don't think this is what people signed up for.
Let's talk about the economic impact of the world right now. What this has caused and what it will potentially cause.
Yeah.
Oil's what, over $100 a barrel now?
Yeah.
Europe's pissed.
Yeah.
China's pissed. Everyone in the Middle East is pissed, except Israel. Dubai's getting hit. I can't even. Jordan's been hit. UAE's been hit. Lebanon's been hit. What else has been hit? Israel's been hit. Kuwait's been hit.
Yeah.
And I was watching this. I think it was on YouTube. This guy was talking about how the UAE could potentially collapse because it's no longer safe to live there.
Yeah.
When Iranian missiles are hitting the city.
Yeah. And look at Bahrain, it's right there. I mean, yeah.
Qatar got hit.
Yeah.
So these are wealthy countries that sell oil and invest it in our stock market. So if nobody goes to Dubai or Abu Dhabi or Oman or Qatar anymore, for these tax safe havens or good for business owners, a wealthy expat community. If they lose that, which it sounds like they probably will because it's no longer safe to be there, then we lose all that money in our stock market, and then the stock market collapses.
We do lose that money. Now, business in those are not as big as oil right now. It is growing, right? And they've been doing a good job trying to promote these areas as places for business. And it's, without a doubt, been growing. Still, the region is based on oil, right? Oil exports. Many of the countries are trying to get away from that because they see it, rightly so. It's a single point of failure, right? If our entire economy is based on oil, it's a single point of failure. We need to diversify, just like any other stock portfolio. And they've been trying to build businesses there. So yes, this will hurt business. Oil's $100 a barrel or more.
Do you want to receive beautiful crystals every month without breaking the bank? I know what you're thinking. It must be too good to be true. What's the catch? We just want your feedback.
Now, is that a good thing for the oil companies? At first you might think, well, yeah, look, they must be making massive profits, right? Maybe. But $100 a barrel on 50% of your previous production doesn't get you anything. It is absolutely a supply and demand type of deal, right? The oil is up because supply is questionable. We've got countries releasing their strategic reserves to try and stable out the cost of oil. We've got the U.S. that has released some of our strategic reserves in order to try and make sure the gas prices don't just shoot through the roof. If we're not getting oil in, we'll release some of our strategic reserves. How much? I think I saw like 15%. Don't quote me on that, but there was a number. It wasn't huge, but those are our strategic reserves. And the other countries too, their strategic reserves. It's kind of like your savings account. Once you start dipping into that, if things continue to go bad, you don't have as much cushion anymore. And that's the decision us and other countries are making, and the other countries aren't happy that we're forcing them to make that decision.
I read that China gets roughly around 10% of its oil from Iran. 75% of its oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz. Japan, I think I read 80 to 90%.
Yeah, I saw 90+% comes through the strait.
I think India, 60-ish%, I believe. Then there's Europe. I mean, there's so much going on. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the Afghanistan withdrawal. A knee-jerk reaction that turned into a complete fucking disaster. But the stakes are a lot higher with this, because this is us. This is the U.S.
And let's explore that for a little bit, because recently I saw that we had ordered, depending on where, 2,500 troops initially, boots on the ground, with possibly another 25 behind them. Did you see that?
I saw 2,500 Marines going on a MEU.
I saw 2,500 on a MEU that were going to look at maybe putting boots on the ground on Clark Island. We'll see. Again, all of this could sound to an armchair quarterback sitting there in the living room, well, like, yeah, let's send in the Marines and we'll secure the area, right? Just to give people a little background here. Afghanistan, I think all of us would agree, was a debacle. Afghanistan has the moniker of the place where empires go to die. You cannot conquer it. It is mountainous. It is tribal. There's so many places to hide, so much to do. It's a brutal landscape, right? I don't think people understand that Afghanistan is bordered with Iran. A lot of Iran is the same, and Iran is not a small country. It's weird because of the way we do the Mercator projection on the maps. You look at it and it looks like, well, that's not very big. If you take it and you put it between the parallels, the latitude parallels, and you move it over to the U.S. and scale it the same, it's like half the size of the U.S. The thing is huge. And a lot of that is mountainous terrain, exactly like Afghanistan, except unlike Afghanistan, they have a fully functional government. They have a fully functional, coordinated military. Do you think we're going to put boots on the ground in Iran? That's not going to happen.
I mean, they've even stated publicly that they're waiting for that. They're ready.
Yeah. Oh,
it almost sounds like they're anxiously.
They're like, bring them on. We fought the Iran-Iraq war. We know how to fight in this region. These are our mountains. This is our military. Bring it on. And you know, which is more difficult to do? Go on an offensive or defend? It's always easier to defend because you get everything there. You know where it is. You're ready. You've mapped out. They have to move. You just have to stay. And that would be absolutely disastrous for us to put boots on the ground there.
I mean, they were the innovation for a lot of the weapons that the Taliban, ISIS, Al-Qaeda were using. They were the innovators. They were the brains behind it.
And this is where a lot of their proxy support came from. The Iran-Iraq war in 1980 taught them that they don't want to fight on their own ground. They can, and they're ready to. It's easier to fight on someone else's ground. The U.S. does the same thing. We don't want to fight on our land. We want to go over and fight on your land, right? And Iran really took this to heart, and they started building more of their military based on engagements outside of their homeland. They invested heavily in missiles. They invested heavily in drones, right? Because they want to project and get the battle away from them, right? And they did. They have perfected a lot of this technology, and they perfected it in a way that it creates a problem for us. If nothing else, an economic problem. They're using Shahed drones, right? We've seen them on the news. You've seen them used. A Shahed drone costs $20,000 to $35,000 to build. We shoot them down with a Patriot missile system. Patriot missile system costs $4 million for one missile. 20,000, 4 million. It's a 200 to 1 ratio. We are spending 200 to 1 to their cost. They can keep that up a long time before we can. We estimate we spent $4 billion in the first week of the Iran war. $4 billion of munitions that just go bang and they're done. Which gets back to the whole point, who wins? Well, now we have to resupply that $4 billion. So, hey, Boeing, Morton Thiokol, whoever, here's a $4 billion contract, we need more weapons. So our military industrial complex gets immediate contracts to resupply all of these weapons.
Have you ever seen a product that transforms any ordinary space into a dreamy underwater world in just 1 second? Meet the Kamau Immersive Ocean Projector, the mood light that's taking the market by storm.
And again, did that help us? Are our gas prices lower? Are food prices lower? Do we have better health care? Do we have better services?
Are we safer?
Are we safer? The benefit to the American living in America is 0 to negative. Who benefited? Israel benefited. So it's difficult to look at this any other way than to say we are fighting this war with our munitions and our people and putting our people at risk. Last number I saw was 13 Americans dead for Israel. I don't know any other way to interpret that.
I don't either.
And that is a sad comment.
What really scares me about Iran is their proxies, Hamas, the terrorist organizations.
Yeah.
The sleeper cells that are supposedly embedded all over the United States, and what that could look like. And I think, I don't know how many attacks we've seen since, but what ODU in Virginia just got hit. Somebody yelled Allah Akbar. Who knows if that was that or not? But when I bring on Sarah Adams, and she talks about the sleeper cells that are all over the U.S. Now, do I think they're going to hit no matter what? Yeah, if they're here, yes, I think they're going to hit no matter what. But does this give them a lot of extra motivation? Absolutely. And so I just want to paint a scenario real quick. I mean, they're talking about simultaneous attacks. Simultaneous attacks throughout the country. One in Dallas, one in New York, one in Chicago, one in Nashville, one in Miami, in Los Angeles. Now, what if they have simultaneous attacks inside of each one of those cities, and it all happens simultaneously to suck up all of the resources and the contingency plans with the police and the first responders, So if they do simultaneous attacks in LA and they hit a hospital over here, and then 30 seconds later they hit a school, and then 30 seconds later they hit a university, and then a preschool. I mean, there's going to be gridlock. Nobody's going to be able to respond. That's one city. Oh, and then you think about all these major cities in the United States.
Yeah.
What that could actually look like.
Yeah.
It'd be a hell of a lot scarier than missiles, because it's true terror.
When I was studying terrorism, one of the things we studied first was, what is the goal of terrorism? What's the goal? And what I remember, and when I was studying it, and quite honestly, the definition may have changed these days, but the goal of terrorism was to make a populace feel that their government could not protect them. So what you want to do is you want to go in and do some act and go, oh my God, this happened, right? The best thing to do as a terrorist then, and you need news coverage of that. People need to know you did it. And then what's going to happen? The government is going to increase security, right? And then do another one. That shows the people that even when the government tries, they can't stop us. And this is regular, just insurgent tactics, right? So could that happen in the U.S.? could. I kind of go back a little more pragmatically though and say, how would that benefit? That's a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of investment. What's the actual benefit from that? Let's say Iran did that. What would our response be? If we could prove Iran did it, our response would be an all-out attack on Iran. Iran knows that. Would it help them? I don't know that it would. I would think a rational war planner, you've always got to ask, if you're going to do something and you're going to expend assets, what's the benefit? And the benefit has to be greater than the assets expended.
Well, I mean, are you asking me?
I'm asking you.
What do I think the benefit is?
What do you think?
I think that this is a I think that this is a religious war, and I wanted to get in this more towards the end. We just killed their fucking Pope. They're pissed. They're extremists. They're Shias. They are extremists. Their goal is to get to heaven. How do they get to heaven? Come over here and pull a jihad. That's what I think the goal is.
I don't know that I agree with that.
Why is that?
If you, in Islam, if you die while you are doing God's work and doing good things, you are shaheed and you go to heaven. If you die doing things that are not in the best interest of the people and are against righteousness, yeah, you don't go to heaven. That's That's not considered something that's good. I don't think Iran looks at the U.S. as the big Satan. They say that, and they chant death to America. Why? Because we're bombing them. And we should get into this. We need to look at the history. You want to get into this now?
Yeah, let's
look at Iran, right? So, first, most people know Iran was Persia, right? Some people don't know that. I say that and they're like, what? I thought Persia was a fictional area. No. It was Persia. It was renamed Iran in 1953. 53 or 35. I might have those mixed up. But anyway, because Persia was an English name that we used. The internal name that they used was Iran, so they renamed themselves as Iran. What a lot of people don't realize was after the Persian Empire fell and Iran was a growing country, they were our number one ally in the Middle East. People don't know that. Right now we say Israel is our only ally in the Middle East. It was Iran. We had the largest embassy ever in Tehran. We ran the CIA headquarters out of Tehran. CIA headquarters for all of the Middle East and Asia was all based out of Iran. That's how close we were with them, right? Now, what happened? Well, first thing that happened was they had a prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, right? In 1953, Mossadegh nationalized their oil and said all of this oil belongs to Iran. Prior to that, Great Britain had been mining and pumping most of their oil. The United States, CIA, and MI6 did a joint venture. United States called it Operation Ajax. MI6 called it Operation Boot. You can look this up, right? We orchestrated a coup. We got rid of Mossadegh, and we took him out of power. In his place was Mohammad Shah Pahlavi, right? He was the Shah. Pahlavi, thanking the U.S. for getting him back into power, signed over 40% of the oil fields to the U.S. and Great Britain.
40%.
40%. Wow. Now think about if somebody signed over 40% of American farmland to another country. Americans would be pissed. Iranians were not happy. Now, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi was actually in power as a figurehead, kind of like the king, if you will, in Great Britain, and Mossadegh was the prime minister. Mossadegh got more power. We took Mossadegh out. Pahlavi takes power again, and he became pretty brutal. He had the Savak military or intelligence. He was a brutal ruler. Iranians were getting fed up. Iranians are like, we're nothing but an American puppet. American CIA and fields to the U.S. and Great Britain.
40%.
40%. Wow. Now think about if somebody signed over 40% of American farmland to another country. Americans would be pissed. Iranians were not happy. Now, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi was actually in power as a figurehead, kind of like the king, if you will, in Great Britain, and Mossadegh was the prime minister. Mossadegh got more power.
Roberto, hello, thank you for being here. Des, Victor, everybody, hello. Okay. Make sure you check out the podcast that we did 2 days ago. Go over to where the videos are. You know how YouTube is sectioned into videos, shorts, and live. Go into the video section. There's a podcast that I did 2 days ago. Please watch it. Please share on your Facebook. and leave me questions. This is a true crime podcast out of Prince William County, and we're tracking and following the case of Mustafa Al-Jazari. It's an ongoing case. The county refused to take this guy to trial. They say he's guilty, but they won't give him his day in court. We got our hand on the file, on the sealed file. We're leaking it on the internet, body cams document, and it shows that the reason the county refused to take him to trial is because they falsified the case. Now, that's a problem. If you're falsifying this case, that means you've been doing it and you're still doing it. Stuff like that don't just happen in a vacuum. So, follow the case, leave me questions, share the podcast, and throughout the day, you'll see me, we're door dashing, so we're trying to make some money. And in between the pickups, what I'm working on is the podcast that I did 2 days ago. I'm cutting it into short videos. So when you see those videos come up, please share them, please hit the like button, and please leave me questions. And thank you for being here. In the meantime, we're listening to this podcast. This is the Sean Ryan podcast. 4 months ago, he did a podcast with a very interesting person, Michael Lester. And it's just, you'll learn so much about our domestic and foreign policy and why we do certain things.
We took Mossadegh out. Pahlavi takes power again. And he became pretty brutal. He had the Savak military or intelligence. He was a brutal ruler. Iranians were getting fed up. Iranians are like, we're nothing but an American puppet. American CIA and MI6 came in, removed our prime minister that was democratically elected, put the Shah in power. The Shah is being brutal. We're giving away all of our oil to America. America's running their CIA out of our country. They had a revolution, 1979. We're all familiar with that. 1979, they have a revolution and say, we're kicking the U.S. out. We want to be our own country. The oil belongs to us. We don't want you here running your politics out of our country. By the way, the students that took over the U.S. Embassy, the U.S. Embassy tried to shred all sorts of documents. They went and pasted them all back together, and they've got all these documents from the CIA pretty much validating all of this, right? So after that happens, it's a pendulum swing. It was very secular, not very religious, and they're like, well, that didn't work. So in 1979, we're going to put in a religious leader. And the pendulum swung over here, right? And that's where we're at pretty much today. So if you look at that, this is not a country that's just out there by themselves that said America is evil. This is a country that America orchestrated a coup in. This is a country that ran their CIA from their country and who took most of their oil. I am not defending them and saying that they're the good guys, but our hands aren't clean here, right? So when they come back now and they're like, okay, we're not even going to do anything. Then Israel comes and says, hey, you need to get rid of Iran. They don't like you. They're against you, right? And they kind of like fan the history of how we got here. Because I don't think anybody wakes up one day and says, I don't like this country.
The customer requested you leave the order at their door. They added the following instructions.
I don't. Maybe some people do. But anytime there's a country that we don't like or that doesn't like us, we should always go back and ask why. What happened? What happened that made this animosity? And I think it's always important to go back to that and understand that, because that understanding is going to drive how we in the future. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
So right now, does Iran want to take over the U.S.? They don't. They don't want to come here. They don't care about, they want to be left alone. We're not leaving them alone. Israel isn't leaving them alone. And Israel is their new best friend, so let's go take out Iran.
If you've ever hunted, you already know how good venison is for you. It's performance meat. Whether you're an athlete, an LEO, a soldier, a first responder, or just someone who works hard and needs real fuel, venison is one of the best things you can put into your body. The best venison on earth is wild harvested on Maui, Hawaii by my friend Jake and the boys at Maui Nui. It's delicious, nutritious, and USDA approved. Clear thermal imaging and takes a single precise shot so the deer never experiences stress. The deer are processed in a USDA approved mobile unit where 94% of every animal is used. That's unheard of. Here around the office, we crush these jerky sticks every single day. It's literally a fight to get to them. I love the original and pepper flavors. They've got 10 grams of protein and just 55 calories, no seed oils, no artificial sweeteners, no synthetic preservatives, just 100% wild harvested access venison. Give it a shot. Visit MauiNuiVenison.com/SRS for a free 6-pack of the jerky sticks with your first order. Again, that's MauiNui venison.com/SRS to get your free venison jerky sticks. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Does Israel want us out of the Middle East?
Eventually.
Why?
They want to be a superpower all on their own. Netanyahu came out, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and said, we want to wean ourselves away from American support.
I saw that too.
2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, again, within the last 6 weeks, he was doing a speech. It's in Hebrew, but it is translated, where he said, we will be the superpower in the Middle East. And that means not using us. That means on their own.
Are they in talks with China?
No idea. No idea.
There's a lot of speculation that that's going to be their new best friend.
I heard something about a year ago about them talking to China. And I remember at the time thinking to myself, well, they've used us up. Let's go to the next one and see what we can get from them.
That's exactly what crossed my mind too.
Yeah.
And they had mentioned, they had mentioned that they will help China with their tech. I don't know if they need help with their tech.
Israel is unabashedly and unashamed opportunists. Whoever's going to help them is their friend. Whoever isn't helping them is their enemy. It's that easy. And right now, we're the host and Israel's the parasite living off of us. And eventually it'll eat you up until you're dead, and then it'll move on to another host. That's a sad comment to make, but...
All right. So here's a problem for Prosecutor Sarah Sammy. We have a leaked body cam. That showed when the judge issued out an order to get Mustafa's vehicle inspected by an independent expert. Investigator Robert Drum, the main investigator, is seen on body cam blocking the SUV from getting it. All right, so here's a problem for Prosecutor Sarah Sammy. We have a leaked body cam that showed when the judge issued out an order to get Mustafa's vehicle inspected by an independent expert, investigator Robert Drum, the main investigator, is seen on body cam blocking the SUV from getting inspected. And he goes on and blocks Mustafa's vehicle from getting inspected by an independent expert. And he says, Prosecutor Sarah Sammy told me that to block the inspection. How does that make any sense? Because you're breaking a judge order. When you block the inspection of the independent expert, you're breaking a judge order and you're blocking this case from going to trial. Now, that's a problem because here in this motion, Prosecutor Sarah Sammy wants to bring in Investigator Derek Vaco to pull the ADR from the Suburban, the other vehicle involved in this collision. Wait a minute, on body cam, we're watching Investigator Drum tell his supervisor that the other vehicle has no evidentiary value. Therefore, we're gonna block it from getting inspected. Let's watch that body cam.
I don't see how Suburban evidentiary value covering
How, did you hear what he just said? He said, I don't see how the SUV has any evidentiary value. So what they've done is they blocked, there's another body cam where they blocked the SUV from getting inspected.
$4.80 offer 3.5 miles. 22 minutes offer accepted. We'll add it to your route. Plus $7.55 plus offer accepted. We'll add it to your route.
Chevy. Hello, hello.
That's.
It seems like we're about dead.
If you just follow it, if you just look at what's happening, that is what works. That's the answer that works.
Have you seen this clip of Netanyahu talking about Rome?
I saw part of that.
Where he says, we won't lose this time. And a lot of speculation is saying that the United States is the new Rome.
We're Rome, yeah. So historically, there's some, there's also some religious texts and whatnot that mention Rome, the powers in the West, and they use Rome. That doesn't mean they mean Rome in Italy. We are the new Rome. We're the empire. That was the Roman Empire, right? Mm-hmm. And again, I always have to caveat a little people because we didn't come from Rome. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that what Rome was at the time, we are today.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're the empire that has the greatest amount of power in the world.
So is there a long-term goal to take us down?
Tough to answer that, because we talked about the last time, no empire has lasted forever. You don't have to take an empire down. It will eventually eat itself. The question is not does the empire survive? No empire has ever survived. The question is what does it become? Does it decrease gracefully?
My spear.
After a 12-hour shift, this is the last message I wanted to see. And to top everything off, of course my car's...
You don't have to take an empire down. It will eventually eat itself. The question is not does the empire survive? No empire has ever survived. The question is what does it become? Does it decrease gracefully to a sustainable power that continues to be relevant in the world? Or does it implode completely and disappear? That's the question. And history has examples of both of those. Every empire in history has ended. Some have ended gracefully and become powers that remain. Great Britain was an empire, right? Pax Britannia, they held the peace. They were the policemen of the world, right? They were everywhere. They declined. Still a powerhouse, still a viable, powerful country, not a world empire anymore. There are other empires, the Roman Empire, completely imploded and gone. You know, there's examples of both. As a historian, I look at this and say, eventually, the U.S. empire as an empire will end. Our question for us is, do we end by pulling back and not being an empire, but being a strong country, which, God, I hope is the case? Or do we just charge until we just run out? And we completely start over from scratch and we're something else, then who knows? I love the United States, and I hope that we have the intelligence to just pull back a little, focus on the United States, and be a superpower without being an empire.
I don't even think that's a possibility. When you look at all the conflict that we're involved in and have been involved in.
Yeah.
I mean, Ukraine, Venezuela, Gaza, Iran, Taiwan. What am I missing? That's just today.
All over the world.
But I just. Now we're talking about Cuba already.
Yeah.
We're what? They're 3-4 weeks into this. What, 3 weeks? 3 weeks into this war with Iran.
How far were we into Venezuela before Iran? 3-4 weeks. Oh, don't forget Greenland before that. We haven't attacked them yet, but Greenland, Venezuela, Iran, Cuba. Don't forget that we said we were going to take back the Panama Canal. Sean, it's crazy.
What is going to happen to our economy? Not just the, let's start with the U.S. economy. I mean, what happens if we have pissed off the GCC so bad that they decide they're not going to trade oil in U.S. dollars anymore?
There is a huge, huge concern. And again, I don't think a lot of people understand why it's important. And again, you hear this from me over and over. You have to go back and look at the history a little bit. You have to know how we got here. The U.S. used to be on a gold standard. And what does that mean? It meant for every dollar you held, it was backed up by gold. Right? Well, we went off the gold standard. So what is a U.S. dollar backed by? It's backed by the belief that the U.S. is good for it. A dollar bill, $10 bill, $100 bill, whatever, is a promise. It's an IOU that says you're going to give them something back that's worth this much, right? If it's gold backed, that means I'm going to get that amount of gold for this. If it's not gold backed, it just means we all agree that this is how much it's worth. Well, that can change overnight. What if we all agree it's not worth that? And right now we use it to trade oil. Every country trades oil in dollars. There's some talk about why that is, and if you look at the Confessions of an Economic Hitman, he talks about how we signed agreements with Saudi Arabia and others that said they would trade in U.S. dollars. That forced the U.S. dollar to have value because you could trade it with oil and everything else, right? But now countries are a little tired of that. By the way, again, this is all one big spider web. Going back to Libya, Gaddafi wanted to form a new currency for Africa called the unit, right? That would not use U.S. dollars. That was sacrilege, couldn't have that. That's another reason we attacked theirs. We couldn't have that.
What if you could see what's happening inside your body? Prenuvo's whole body scan.
The customer requested you leave the order at their door. They added the following instructions. Leave at my door.
Under an hour. And now you can go beyond beyond imaging with 80+ blood biomarkers that help complete the picture. Proactive health starts here. Book your scan at prenuvo.com.
Now, what's the big threat to the U.S.? BRICS. BRICS wants to get off of the U.S. dollar and have their own trading units that is not U.S. based.
Last time I checked, that went from Russia, Brazil, Russia, India, China.
Enough of us agree, we'll just stop and we'll switch over to this. But we need enough of us first to make the switch. So right now there's still talk of let's get enough of us so that we can all agree and then do the switch, right? Also, though, you've got a lot of tie-ins with other countries have invested in the U.S. They own buildings, they own land, they own companies, right? So if our economy tanks, their investments tank. Everything is so interconnected. It's not just an easy, we're going to pull out because we're also going to take a hit then. But then these other countries have to look at it and go, which is worse? This hit or the long-term, stability and freedom to do what we want without someone else telling us what to do?
It's growing. BRICS is growing.
That movement around the world is growing.
No, but it's going to grow real fast now. What does that look like, though? What does it look like if we don't, if the Middle East no longer trades their oil in U.S. dollars? What does that mean for us?
I don't know. I'm not an economist, and the little I've read, not good. Our dollar value compared to other currencies would decrease. Could decrease to the point of the dollar being worth pennies on the dollar right now. Now, run that out with people's 401ks, retirement. What happens when all of a sudden your retirement is worth that becomes a big issue. And it becomes an issue for us as a country, buying goods, services, and food from other countries. It becomes an issue for us as individuals. We're like, hey, I thought I was set up and I had this much value and now I don't. What do I do? It has an issue for young people saying, well, how do I start a family and grow and if what I have is not worth anything? And there are people a lot better versed on this and the economics than me to cover that. But that's something I would look forward to.
I mean, they're talking about a global depression. A global depression.
Could be, because everything's tied together.
Do you think there is a possibility that they're not... Do you think the possibility that all these recent attacks on other countries, pull Maduro out, Iran, do you think that this is a attack on China's energy? They get 70 to 75% of their oil from the Strait of Hormuz. Then there's Venezuela, we snatch them. I'm just asking, maybe I'm just asking if maybe we don't have a full picture.
Well, I don't think we do have a full picture. I think by design, we don't see all of it. The internet has been great in that we get a lot of information we didn't used to. It's horrible in that it's also easy to hide some of the information. You have to really go dig for it to try and find some of these things, and a lot of it is still hidden.
I don't think that. But I'm also trying to think of ways that something that may be a little bit more positive other than we're under Israeli influence. You know, and so even go back a little bit farther, you know, the Panama Canal, which was supposedly controlled by China.
A Chinese company.
We fixed that.
Yeah.
You know, we pulled Maduro out. Now we've bombed the shit out of Iran and they closed the strait.
So you're asking is there a possibility that this is a planned, orchestrated
Is China's a bigger
events in order to contain China?
Is China now? You know, on the caveat that I mean they're investing, from what I understand, heavily in nuclear capabilities. So I think that would just speed that up, and they don't have to deal with all the fucking red tape that we have to deal with. So I think that would be a relatively easy pivot for them.
I think it would be an easy pivot for them. And per capita, the U.S. consumes more in oil per person than China does by far. It would hurt us more than it would hurt them. I think if we're looking at ways to contain China, I wouldn't see this as a advisable path. There's too many things that can go wrong and too many things that will destroy an economy as a side effect. You know what I'm saying? And look at what they're doing with chip manufacturing and robotics and drones and whatnot. I don't think we would contain them by this. It'd be wonderful to think, hey, somebody has a grand plan here. You know, somebody's got this figured out. I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, it's a friend of mine, my attorney actually brought that up to me, and I said, you know, I don't think that, but I hope you're right. I hope there's a broader plan here than what seems to be the obvious. But
you know, there's lots of times I hear some of these, I'm like, God, I would love to believe that.
Yeah.
But call me skeptical.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to sound always doom and gloom, right? That, you know, all of this is bad, you know, everything is falling apart. There's still a lot we can do. America is still, in my opinion, the best country in the world, right? Look at the people we have, look at our land, look at our resources. We have a lot of oil, right? We have food that we export. Our problem, if you will, is we have stretched out so far to try and extend our power and control that we're starting to lose the whole reason for having that power and control, and that is the lifestyle and benefits to American citizens. And that's why, personally, I am a proponent of pulling back some of what we're doing worldwide and concentrating on America. Let's make sure, and again, Iran, is this helping anybody here? I can't see that it is. We're spending a lot of money and we're not benefiting Americans. We're benefiting Israelis. Certainly not benefiting Iranis. I want to benefit Americans.
Or any of the other Middle East.
Or any of the rest of the Middle East.
Or the world.
Or the world. So let's concentrate on us. That's where I want to go with this.
I think we leave that section for the end.
All right.
But let's take a break. But before we do, you know, I got Patreon.
Of course.
They're the reason we get to be here today. And so, this is from Zach Walton. What does victory in Iran look like? The president's 4 objectives are to stop the production of ballistic missiles, prevent nuclear proliferation in Iran, destroy the Iranian Navy, and prevent Iran from funding proxies. To achieve these objectives, is there any outcome except regime change to a Western-friendly regime?
You know, who put this in?
Zach Walton.
Zach, great question. I love it. Because as a military person, you always want to know, what's the goal? Why am I here?
Wait a minute. Why is Officer Chad Mason not telling us what the police department found when they inspected Mustafa's vehicle? I mean, Officer Chad Mason, you're all over the news, but you're not telling us that the police department found brake failure when they inspected Mustafa's vehicle. Let's go over to the body cam that's leaked out of Mustafa's file.
Right rear tire, brake, didn't engage.
Let's listen to that one.
And more than that, when am I done? When I hit this threshold, when this happens, I'm done. And the one thing we don't want is forever wars where we don't define what done is. I apologize if I'm repeating myself. I was talking to some people beforehand. I've been talking to people every day, and I keep saying the same things, and sometimes I'm like, who did I say this to and who didn't I say this to? But we have to know what done is, right? And Zach was right. Those are the 4 objectives that were stated. And you and I, when we were starting this, we talked about 3 are very measurable. 1 is not. So let's talk about regime change. We did it. We killed their leader. They put in a new one. How'd that work for us?
Not great.
Let's kill this one. Guess what they'll do? Put in a new one. How will that work for us?
You know, this is exactly what we did in the Afghan war.
It is.
I think there was a time period when I was in where the number 2 in charge had a 2-week life expectancy.
Yeah.
And it was just a revolving door.
Yeah.
Change a damn thing.
And then people say, well, we need to really do a regime change. And by the way, I always take a little offense that regime is a government. We call it a regime when we don't like it. But it's a government. We want to forcibly change the leader of another government. Let's call it what it is. Now, we did that. We did that in 1953 when we put Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi in power. That was a Western-supported, Western-aligned leader. How did that turn out for us? That ended up with the 1979 revolution to kick him out. The answer is not to put in leaders that are American puppets. The answer is to treat people and countries respectfully, respect their resources, negotiate with them to get good prices and agreements where we share resources, with the best terms we can get. But then beat them over the head, take their resources, and say, well, we got the deal for us because we're taking it. That never ends well, perhaps. So, I'm not a fan of regime change. Number one, it's never worked in any situation I can think of. If it works temporarily, eventually falls and you're worse off than you were before. Iran is a poster child for that.
I mean, it seemed like a lot of the people in the administration were also against this. Remember, I read those quotes at the beginning. Maybe I should read them again right now. I'm not going to, but, you know, a lot of talk about endless war, no more endless wars, no more regime change, no more Russian democracy, all of that. Right down the shit.
And you know what? We have some really smart people in the government. We have some people in our foreign service. We have some people in the State Department. And if any of you are watching this, thank you for everything you're doing. They have spent their lives studying how to interact with foreign countries. They have spent their lives studying the economy and the culture of foreign countries so that they can advise our leaders better on how to interact with them. What I see us doing right now is ignoring all of them. And we're just going to go in and do this. Yeah, that's probably not what you want to do. I think we have. Talking to some of the other people on your team here earlier, we were discussing this. I read a
Now, how does that make any sense? Let's listen to that one more time. Suburban. Now, how does that make any sense? Let's listen to that one more time. Suburban evidentiary value. How the suburban evidentiary value. I don't see how the suburban evidentiary value covered. Right. So he's telling his supervisor that there is no evidentiary value, and here they're blocking the suburban. Am I allowed to purchase the other vehicle? No. Okay. I'm not court order. Am I allowed to? Am I allowed to look at the Suburban? He says no. He tells his supervisor that it has no evidentiary value. Well, let's go back to what Sarah Sammy's telling us. In a motion, she wrote, we're going to read that again. Page 3 out of 11. Here she says, Item 1. The expert testimony of investigator Derek Faco of the Prince William County Police Department regarding the retrieval of event data recorder, EDR data from the Chevy Suburban. So your investigator can take the stand and go over and interpret the EDR of the Suburban, but Mustafa's independent expert is being blocked from inspecting and reconstructing this collision and inspecting the EDR and the Suburban. And what did they say in court? What did prosecutor Sarah Sammy tell the judge in court? This is in the courts. Sarah Sammy tells Judge Weimer that, Your Honor, we allowed the inspection of the vehicle and the reconstruction of this accident. We allowed the independent expert to go in there. Now, how does that make any sense? Let's listen to that one more time. The suburban evidentiary value how the suburban evidentiary value is just for this. Court orders just for this, and I don't see how the suburban evidentiary value covering it. Alright, so he's telling his Alright. Now, how does that make any sense? Let's listen to that one more time. The suburban evidentiary value how the suburban evidentiary value is just for this. Court orders just for this, and I don't see how the suburban Alright, so he's Alright, so he's telling his supervisor that there is no evidentiary value, and here they're blocking the suburban. In the suburban. Alright, so he's telling his supervisor that there is no evidentiary value, and here they're blocking the suburban. Am I allowed to? Am I? Am I no evidentiary value. We're going to read that again. Page 3 out of 11. Here she says, supervisor. No evidentiary. Item 1. The expert testimony of investigator Derek Fake. Now, how does that make any sense? Let's listen to that one more time. Suburban evidentiary value. How Suburban evidentiary value. It's just for this. Court order's just for this, and I don't see. Now, how does that make any sense? Let's listen to that one more time. Suburban evidentiary value. How Suburban evidentiary value. It's just for this. Court order's just for this, and I don't see how Suburban evidentiary value covering it. So he's telling his supervisor that there is no evidentiary value, and here they're blocking the Suburban. Am I allowed to see pictures together, Chief? No. Okay. I'm not. The Suburban. Court order. Am I allowed to look at the Suburban? He says no. He tells the supervisor that it has no evidentiary value. But let's go back to what Sarah Sammy's telling us. In a motion, she wrote, we're going to read that again. page 3 out of 11. Here she says, Item 1. The expert testimony of investigator Derek Faco of the Prince William County Police Department regarding the retrieval of event data recorder, EDR data from the Chevy Suburban. So your investigator can take the stand and go over and interpret the EDR of the Suburban, but Mustafa's independent expert is being blocked from inspecting and reconstructing this collision and inspecting the EDR and of the Suburban. And what did they say in court? What did prosecutor Sarah Sammy tell the judge in court? This is what she's telling the court. Sarah Sammy tells Judge Weimer that, Your Honor, we allowed the inspection of the vehicle and the reconstruction of this accident. We allowed the independent expert to go in there. Now,
And more than that, when am I done? When I hit this threshold, when this happens, I'm done. And the one thing we don't want is forever wars where we don't find what done is. I apologize if I'm repeating myself. I'm talking to some people beforehand. I've been talking to people every day, and I keep saying the same things, and sometimes I'm like, who did I say this to and who didn't I say this to? But we have to know what done is, right? And Zach was right. Those are the 4 objectives that were stated. And you and I, when we were starting this, we talked about 3 are very measurable. 1 is not. So let's talk about regime change. We did it. We killed their leader. They put in a new one. How'd that work for us? Not great. Let's kill this one. Guess what they'll do? Put in a new one. How will that work for us?
You know, this is exactly what we did in the Afghan war.
It is.
I think there was a time period when I was in where the number 2 in charge had a 2-week life expectancy.
Yeah.
And it was just a revolving door.
Yeah.
To change the damn thing.
And then people say, well, we need to really do a regime change. And by the way, I always take a little offense that regime is a government. We call it a regime when we don't like it. But it's a government. When we want to forcibly change the leader of another government, let's call it what it is. Now, we did that. We did that in 1953 when we put Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi in power. That was a Western-supported, Western-aligned leader. How did that turn out for us? That ended up with the 1979 revolution to kick him out. The answer is not to put in leaders that are American puppets. The answer is to treat people and countries respectfully, respect their resources, negotiate with them to get good prices and agreements where we share resources, with the best terms we can get, but not go in, beat them over the head, take their resources and say, well, we got the best deal for us because we're taking it. That never ends well. Never has. So I'm not a fan of regime change. Number one, it's never worked in any situation I can think of. If it works temporarily, it eventually falls and you're worse off than you were before. Iran is a poster child for that.
I mean, it seemed like a lot of the people in the administration were also against this. Remember, I read those quotes at the beginning. Maybe I should read them again right now. I'm not going to, but, a lot of talk about endless war, no more endless wars, no more regime change, no more pushing democracy. All of that. Right down the shit.
And you know what? We have some really smart people in the government. We have some people in our foreign service. We have some people in the State Department. If any of you are watching this, thank you for everything you're doing. They have spent their lives studying how to interact with foreign countries. They have spent their lives studying the economy and the culture of foreign countries so that they can advise our leaders better on how to interact with them. What I see us doing right now is ignoring all of them. Well, we're just going to go in and do this. That's probably not what you want to do. I think we have completely and totally misread or ignored Iranian culture and thought patterns.
Do you think that the majority of Iranians want to see a regime change?
Great question. I was talking to some of the other people in your team here earlier. We were discussing this. I read a really interesting article written by an Iranian gentleman. And he said, I'm Iranian. I live in Tehran, right? I see this every day. So I'm not happy with my government. My government is not representing me the way I would like. I don't want America to come in here. Because quite honestly, we've seen, and this is his opinion, we've seen what happens to countries after America comes in. And that's worse than what we have right now. Do I want our government to change? Yes. Do I want America to come in here and do it? No. That is one Iranian's opinion that I read. But it's an interesting. Perception. And it starts you thinking of like, well, so what is the Iranian viewpoint right now? We see on the news
$5.70 offer 6.1 miles. Offer accepted. We'll add it to your route.
And what did they say in court? What did prosecutor Sarah Sammy tell the judge in court? This is what she's telling the courts. Sarah Sammy tells Judge Weimer that, Your Honor, we allowed the inspection of the vehicle and the reconstruction of this accident. We allowed the independent expert to go in there. Let's read what she says. So we just watched the body cam where they're blocking it. But in court, she tells the judge, Miss Sammy, my understanding, this is what prosecutor Sarah Sammy is telling Judge Weimer, my understanding, so in the lower court, when Mr. Steven was counsel of record for Mr. Al-Jazari, I set up a time with the police department to allow Mr. Stevens and an expert that had been hired by him to come and inspect each of the vehicle at the impound lot. Wait a minute. So you're telling the judge in court that you set up a time for the independent expert to go out and look at each of the vehicles and get this collision reconstructed. Why are we watching this on body cam? Why are we watching your officer tell the independent experts that you said you can't look at the car and blocking this reconstruction, breaking a judge order?
What's that? It's in the box. Per my conversation with Sarah, said this is the first time I've ever done this in 18 years. She said we can pull it out for you. Yeah. You can look at it. She doesn't want anybody touching it. Okay. Like touching it, I mean, can I? Like if you want to take pictures and all that, but if anything needs to be manipulated, we'll do it for you. Perfect. For chain of custody issues. Perfect. Sure. Okay. But you're more welcome to like poke around. Yeah. But nothing gets moved or anything like that.
So, Sarah Sammy in court. Let's go back to Sarah Sammy one more time. Sarah Sammy's telling us what exactly? Sarah Sammy's telling us, my understanding, so in the lower court, when Mr. Stevens was counsel of record, or Mr. Al-Jazari, I set up a time with the police department to allow Mr. Stevens and an expert that had been hired by him to come and inspect each of the vehicle at the impound lot. Each of the vehicles. We just watched the body cam where they're blocking the SUV, they're blocking the other vehicle, and this independent expert is so shocked. Let's watch the rest of the body cams, where he's telling him, am I even allowed to take the wheel off? He's like, no. Sarah Sammy said, you can't touch the vehicle.
face covered, and they have no rights, and anybody can do anything at any time. But then go get on some of these other social media sites, and I like to look at all of them, right, as much as I can. And you get videos and things sent by teens and 20s out there having fun. They're in nightclubs dancing. They're driving. They're nothing of what we're seeing in the news. And that's when you start questioning, going, am I getting the real story? Because when I've got random people putting this out here, and I've got my official news telling me this, I come to the same cognitive dissonance we talked about before. These don't match. Somebody's not telling the truth. And I have suspicion that one of these has an agenda. One of them is just random. So I'm like, maybe we should start paying attention to this a little bit.
All right, let's take a break. If you listen to this show, you know I care about performance and what goes into my body. We should have that same standard for our dogs, but usually feeding them fresh food means a freezer full of mess and prep time. You usually have to choose healthy or easy. That's why I switched to Sundays for Dogs. It was founded by a veterinarian, Dr. Tori Waxman, who got tired of seeing premium foods full of synthetics. Sundays is air-dried real food, meat, fruits, and veggies made in a human-grade kitchen. Compared to kibble, Sundays invests 50 times more in its ingredients to ensure premium quality. No weird fillers, no synthetics. And the best part, you just scoop and serve. No thawing, no prep, no mess. Since making the switch, I've noticed my dog has more consistent energy levels and a much softer coat. It's real food that fuels his best days. Make the switch to Sundays. Go right now. All right, Michael, we're back from the break, and we talked a little bit about ground troops and Trump sending ground troops to Iran. Yeah. I want to elaborate a little bit more on that and get into some, what are the chances that we use nukes? But before we do, as of this recording today, Polymarket says there's a 16% chance that the U.S. will invade Iran by March 31st. Do you think that's a possibility?
I don't think we will. Again, I don't think there's a military person alive that's going to tell you that it is a smart thing to invade Iran.
You don't think so?
I don't. And even people were saying, well, what if we just occupy Karg Island? Right? Some of my friends were like, well, that's their big oil production thing, so let's occupy that. I went, yeah, let's do that. Let's put all of our troops in one little area where they have no means of escape, next to a country that has one of the best missile systems in the world. That's a great idea. Let's not do that. So if it's not Karg Island, then where are we putting troops? Tehran. How do you put troops in the middle of a city? I mean, you've done military operations in urban terrain. Horrible. I mean, it's worse than the mountains. There's so many hiding places, so many places to go and do, and you clear one building, and as soon as you leave it, it's reoccupied. That's a tough thing. So we have to go back to, for what effect? What's the goal? What would be our goal in doing that, and what would we accomplish?
But I think the goal would be to topple the entire government.
That's going to be tough, because that means taking Tehran. How easy would it be somebody to take Washington, D.C. right now? I mean, you're not talking about 2,500 Marines anymore. You're talking about regiments of Army that, I mean, I can't even imagine what that would take.
I mean, I think we would destroy it from the air and then send it in the ground.
Ground is always an issue.
I think that it would be tenfold worse than what Fallujah was.
But, so let's play that scenario out. Let's say we do that. Well, let's say we take that as a goal, right? How much munitions and how much American military power would it take to do that? And don't forget that while we're doing this, while we are depleting our weapon systems, while we are, again, 4 billion a day, how many missiles have we fired? 2,000 some? We've got China and Russia just sitting there going, hey, go ahead, deplete your military. Because it'll take you years to recover. And while you're doing that, yeah, Ukraine is 100% ours about it. Taiwan is 100% ours, and there's nothing you can do about it because you don't have any more fighting capability left. Is that capital we're willing to spend?
It appears so.
That's scary. That is scary. And you went into the, are we going to use nukes? Are we willing to nuke an entire city for what? Hiroshima and Nagasaki? We were fighting a war with that country that was attacking us. We're not doing that here. So we're talking about using a nuclear weapon to destroy a city of millions of people. We better be ready to justify that with something. And I can't think of a justification for that. And again, talking with people, they're like, well, what about less than that? I'm like, theater tactical nukes. Okay.
We'll say it's real.
Again, that has always been a concern. When I was in Desert Storm, Desert Shield, we were worried about Israel using nukes. And I know that Saddam fired a bunch of Scud missiles at Israel, almost trying to get them to use them. And our belief at the time was, if they use nukes, then other countries are going to go after them. They're going to say no, right? Luckily, they didn't at the time. If Israel uses nukes, that's a red line that you cross, and every country in the world is going to jump in on that one. I don't think anybody's going to sit by while somebody else uses nuclear weapons and do nothing.
Definitely seems to be taboo. But, I mean, if you look at these countries out to be unpredictable, I think the country that's probably the most unpredictable right now is Israel. restraint. They do anything they want. And we back them 100%. Yeah. I mean, did you see the school? It was an all-girls school. Approximately 175 to 180 killed. I think 100 I can't remember, most of those were little girls. Just like what they did in Gaza. Because over 20,000 kids. Now we're doing it in Iran. And we're fucking backing them.
Yeah. Well, and you saw that all analysts right now point to this school in Iran being hit by a Tomahawk.
I didn't know that.
All analysts have looked at that and said this is almost assuredly a Tomahawk missile. Only two countries are using Tomahawk missiles, the UK and us. That's the only ones we sell them to. So that was an American missile that hit that. They have videos of them going through the wreckage and finding parts that say USA on them. When the analysts have looked at the blast and whatnot, they're like, this is signature Tomahawk. That opens up a whole new can of worms. So now we're providing collateral damage to civilians for Israel. And again, I tell people all the time, don't believe me, go look it up. But yeah.
What would our strategy be, do you think, if we went to a ground war?
A ground war?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't imagine what we would do in a ground war where we would meet any of the objectives that we're saying we want to meet. Annihilate their navy? No. Destroy their missile systems? We can do all that from the air. Why are we putting ground troops in harm? Cut off their proxy pathways? I don't need troops on the ground for that. Keeps them from developing nuclear weapons? Again, I don't need ground troops for that. So I'm not sure why we would engage ground troops. I don't see the military goal that would support.
What about their water supply?
For ground troops, we could take that out from the air.
Do you think we would?
I think we run the risk of then going down the path of war crimes and collective punishment to the civilian population that is not a military target. I mean, this is what we're looking at Israel doing. I mean, they cut off all water to Gaza. They cut off food. Is that affecting the military fighting? It's affecting civilians, and we've seen the horrendous videos from there. Right? That is expressly not supposed to happen under the Geneva Convention and what is it, the Second Amendment to it or whatever. But that's what they do. Everything is justifiable. The end justifies whatever means they're on.
When does this end with Israel? I mean, is Iran the last one, or is Turkey going to be next?
I don't think it ever ends.
So that brings me to, what is the real goal here? Is this a holy war?
It is for Israel.
Are they trying to speed this up?
And they absolutely are. And we're going to get into a area I have to be a little bit careful of here. God's chosen people. There's so many statements that support that.
I mean, just read the Epstein files. You can figure that out real fast.
Yeah, whatever it takes, right? We'll do blackmail, we'll do assassinations. Read the book Rise and Kill First. It's just a complete dictionary of all of the assassinations that Israel does. Is Israel in any way, shape, or form interested in peace? Absolutely not. You remember, obviously they were fighting with Hamas. Do you remember? Hamas said we will negotiate. They were supposed to meet in Doha. Israel bombed the hotel that the negotiators were in and killed them. Well, if you're killing the negotiators, clearly you don't want to negotiate. So the goal was never peace. The goal is destruction of everybody other than Israelis. And that's always been the goal. And the Israelis have this saying, never again. And I used to think that was a very laudable, wonderful, laudable thing to say. Never again. This should never happen again. Then I realized that's not what they mean. They mean never again to us. We can do the same thing to you.
We are.
$4.95 high paying offer 2.6 miles. 15 minutes to offer accepted. We'll add it to your route.
And what did they say in court? What did prosecutor Sarah Sammy tell the judge? The independent expert. So you're telling the judge in court that you... that you set up a time. You're... And what did they say in And what did they say in court? And what did they say in court?
American Zionist
The American Zionist Emergency, I think it was commission. I don't remember what the C stood for, but I think it was commission. 1943. Bad things are happening to Jews. We need an emergency committee. I think it was committee, American Zionist Emergency Committee. We need to form a group in the U.S. that is advocating to help Jews, especially in Germany, World War II, everything going on. Great. 1943, they were made. 1949, the war is over. They said it's no longer an emergency. We will rename to the American Zionist Committee. And again, I think it's committee. Anyway, so that's what they did. Now, during the 50s then, the Eisenhower administration, FARA came into effect, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, that said if you are representing another country, you have to register and be clear that you're representing a country, right? So Eisenhower was pushing hard for the American Zionists, I don't think it is committee, but anyway, the group, to register as a foreign agent. In 1962, Robert Kennedy's DOJ said, essentially, we're done. Register as a foreign agent or we're disbanding you. So the American Zionist group shut down, rebranded as AIPAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs, and said, we are no longer representing a country. We're just working on public affairs. There was one guy, and I forgot his name, but he was the head of the AZC, and he was a registered foreign agent himself. And then when they formed AIPAC, they said, okay, we don't want you to be part of AIPAC because we don't want to have to register. So this is the genesis of AIPAC. AIPAC was the American Zionist Committee. It's not committee, though. I can't remember what it was. A group. That is their genesis. That is how they were formed. And they then started, they didn't register as a foreign agent. And then they started, though, coordinating how they could influence people. 2021, they said, we're not doing it. So 2021, they formed the AIPAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, Political Action, that will then directly fund people.
So you're telling the judge in court that you set up a time for the independent expert to go out and look at each of the vehicles and get this collision reconstructed. Why are we watching this home body cam? Why are we watching your office officer tell the independent experts that you said you can't look at the car. You're blocking this reconstruction, breaking a judge order.
Which one is it? What's that? Which one is in the box? Per my conversation with Sarah, said this is the first time I've ever done this in 18 years. She said we can pull it out for you. Yeah. You can look at it. There's anybody who change. Perfect. Sure. Okay. But you're more welcome to like poke around. Yeah. But nothing smooth change or anything like that.
So, Sarah Sammy in court. Let's go back to Sarah Sammy one more time. Sarah Sammy's telling us what exactly? Sarah Sammy's telling us, my understanding, so in the lower court, when Mr. Stevens was counsel of record, or Mr. Aljatori, I set up a time with the police department to allow Mr. Stevens and an expert that had been hired by him to come and inspect each of the vehicle at the impound lot. Each of the vehicles. We just watched a body cam where they're blocking the SUV, they're blocking the other vehicle, and this independent expert is so shocked. Let's watch the rest of the body cams, where he's telling him, am I even allowed to take the wheel off? He's like, no. Sarah Sammy said, you can't touch the vehicle.
I would say leave the wheel on. Sarah said she doesn't want anything manipulated. I don't mind a cap coming off looking at something, but taking a wheel off.
He has a judge order to get this vehicle inspected. Are you terrified that this independent expert is going to look at the car? Your prosecutor is telling him in court, is telling the judge, I'm letting the independent expert reconstruct this collision. But here you are on a leaked body cam. On a leaked body cam has showed that the main investigator, the same investigator that lied all over the news, Robert Drum, is telling the independent expert, prosecutor Sarah Sammy said, you cannot reconstruct this accident. You cannot touch the vehicles. Not Mustafa's vehicle, not the other vehicle involved in this collision, the SUV. So you're telling...
Perfect, sure. Okay. But you're more welcome to like poke around. Yeah. But nothing gets moved or anything like that. So.
Joe, did you?
So, court, let's go back to Sarah Sammy. One more time. Sarah Sammy's.
Perfect, sure, okay.
$2.80 off for 3.4 miles, 15 minutes total.
He's telling us what exactly? Sarah Sammy's telling us. My understanding, so in the lower court, when Mr. Stevens was counsel of record, or Mr. Algatory, I set up a time with the police department to allow Mr. Stevens.
This offer timed out and was declined. Looking for your next one.
To come and inspect each of the by him. By him to come and inspect each of the vehicle at the impound lot. Each of the vehicles. Where he's telling him, am I even allowed to take the wheel off? He's like, no. Sarah Sammy said, you can't touch the vehicle. allowed to take the wheel off? He's like, no. Sarah Sammy said, you can't touch the vehicle. Where he's telling him, am I even allowed to take the wheel off? He's like, no. Sarah Sammy said, you can't touch the vehicle.
$2.80 off for 3.4 miles, 13 minutes total. This offer timed out and was declined. Looking for your next one.
Anything manipulated? I don't mind a cab coming off looking at something, but taking a wheel off.
He has a judge order. But you're telling the judge in court that you set up a time for the end. So you're telling the judge in court that you set up a time for the independent expert. So you're telling the judge in court that you set up a time for the independent expert to go out and $8.16 off for 7.8 miles, 27 minutes total. Offer accepted. We'll add it to your route.
pretty intensely working with the DA's office, right?